My name is Lena Marlowe, and I am 34 years old. Last December, on Christmas Eve, my family gathered in my parents' dining room beneath crystal lights, gold ribbon, and a tree decorated so perfectly it looked like it belonged in a hotel lobby. There were cousins I barely knew, neighbors my mother wanted to impress, my father's old golf friends, and enough forced laughter to fill the entire house. In the middle of that beautiful room, in front of almost everyone I had ever called family, my parents handed my older sister a luxury Mediterranean vacation for 4. Then they handed me a cheap lottery ticket folded inside a grocery store envelope, like a joke they had been waiting all night to deliver. My mother smiled at me with that soft, poisoned smile she reserved for public humiliation and said, "We thought this was more appropriate for where your life is right now, sweetheart." The room laughed. My sister laughed first, then covered her mouth like that made it kinder. My father looked down into his wine glass. My brother-in-law smirked like he had just watched someone lose a game they never knew they were playing. No one in that room knew that the little ticket in my hand would become worth $92 million. But the money was not the most important thing I won that night. What I really won was the right to stop begging people to love me correctly. And before I tell you what happened next, you need to understand that I was not born angry. I was trained into silence, year by year, dinner by dinner, insult by insult, until silence became the only language my family accepted from me. Christmas at the Marlowe house had always been less of a holiday and more of an audition. My mother, Celeste, believed love should be staged beautifully. Every candle had a place. Every plate had to match. Every smile had to appear at the correct moment. My father, Warren, believed family meant loyalty, but only the kind that flowed toward him. My sister, Sienna, believed she was the center of every room because our parents had spent 37 years making sure she never had a reason to doubt it. And I was Lena, the practical one, the quiet one, the one who brought extra serving spoons, fixed the porch lights, watered the plants, drove Grandma home, and pretended not to notice when nobody saved me a seat. That year I arrived early because my mother had asked me to help a little. Help a little meant I spent 3 hours before dinner arranging candles, steaming napkins, washing wine glasses, and carrying heavy trays from the kitchen while Sienna arrived at 6:15 with her husband, Blake, and their twin boys dressed like a magazine spread. My mother dropped the silverware she was counting and rushed toward the foyer. "There she is," she sang, as if Sienna had returned from war instead of from a house 15 minutes away. "My beautiful girl." I stood behind them holding a hot casserole dish through 2 dish towels, watching my mother kiss both of Sienna's cheeks and tell her she looked radiant. Sienna did look beautiful. She always did. She wore cream silk, diamond studs, and the relaxed expression of someone who knew the world would rearrange itself before asking her to move. Blake came in behind her with a bottle of wine so expensive my father lifted it like a newborn. "That's my son-in-law," Dad said proudly. "A man with taste." I set the casserole down because my fingers were burning. No one noticed. When my mother finally turned toward me, her eyes flicked over my dark green sweater, my simple black pants, and the rosemary sprigs I had tucked around the table settings because I thought they smelled like winter. "Lena," she said, "try not to overdo the rustic thing. This is Christmas, not a farmer's market." I nodded. That was how I survived in that house. I nodded at things that deserved a response because responding had never changed anything. The evening unfolded exactly the way it always did. Sienna told stories about school fundraisers, spa appointments, and the new kitchen island Blake was having imported from Italy. My father clapped Blake on the back every time he mentioned business, though no one in the family could ever explain what Blake actually did. Private financing, he would say, smiling. Strategic acquisitions, words with polished shoes and no fingerprints. I had worked around enough wealthy clients in my landscape design business to recognize a man who made money from other people's desperation. But instinct is not proof, and in my family, my instincts were treated like bad manners. At dinner, Aunt Ruth, my mother's younger sister, tried to ask me about my work. "Lena, didn't you just finish that courtyard project downtown?" She said, "The one with the rain garden." I opened my mouth, genuinely grateful for the question, but my mother interrupted before I could answer. Yes, she's still doing outdoor decorating." Outdoor decorating. I designed climate-resilient urban spaces. I negotiated city permits, drainage systems, soil remediation, native planting plans, public access design, and corporate sustainability installations. But to my mother, my work was flowers and dirt because reducing me made her feel taller. Sienna gave me a sympathetic little smile, the kind people use when they want credit for pity. "At least you do something creative," she said. "I could never work with mud all day." The boys laughed because their mother laughed. I folded my napkin in my lap and looked down at my plate. Across the table, Grandma Lena watched me. She was 89, thin as a candle, with silver hair pinned at the back of her head and eyes that still missed nothing. She had been moved into an assisted living facility after a fall in October, though she had begged to stay in her little blue house near the park. My mother insisted it was safer. My father agreed too quickly. Grandma had not been herself since then. She tired easily. Sometimes she lost her train of thought. But that night her eyes were clear, and when she caught me looking at her, she gave the smallest shake of her head, as though warning me not to let the room swallow me whole. After dinner, while I was scraping plates in the kitchen, I heard voices through the half-open pantry door. My parents, Sienna, Blake. I should have walked away, but then I heard my name. "You didn't tell her about the trip, did you?" Sienna asked. My mother sighed. "Of course not. Why would we?" Blake laughed under his breath. "Because she'll make a speech about fairness and feelings." "Lena doesn't make speeches," my father said. "She sulks." My hand tightened around the sponge. Sienna said, "It's just going to be awkward when she finds out everyone else is going." Everyone else. The words landed harder than I expected. My mother lowered her voice, but not enough. "This vacation is for people who can appreciate it. We are celebrating your new chapter with Blake, the boys, the business, everything. Lena would be uncomfortable. She doesn't fit that lifestyle." I pushed the pantry door open. 4 faces turned. My mother's expression tightened for half a second before she recovered. "Oh, sweetheart, we didn't realize you were there." "Clearly," I said. "What vacation?" Sienna tilted her head. "Lena, don't make it weird." That sentence described my entire childhood. When they hurt me, my reaction was the problem. My father rubbed his forehead. "It's just a family holiday in the spring, nothing dramatic." "A family holiday," I repeated. "Without me." My mother placed one hand over her heart as if I had wounded her. "You're always busy. You're independent. You don't need everything to be equal." Independent was the word they used when they meant excluded. Strong was the word they used when they meant unsupported. Difficult was the word they used when I stopped thanking them for crumbs. Before I could answer, Grandma Alina appeared in the hallway, one hand gripping her cane, the other pressed against the wall. "Celeste," she said, her voice thin but sharp. "That is enough." My mother's face flushed. "Mother, you should be sitting down. And you should be ashamed." The kitchen went still. Grandma's gaze moved to me. "Lena, call Miriam Vale tomorrow." "Who?" I asked. My mother stepped forward quickly. "She's tired. She doesn't know what she's saying." Grandma did not look away from me. "Miriam Vale," she repeated. "Promise me." Then my mother took her arm with practiced gentleness and guided her away, saying loud enough for everyone to hear, "The doctor warned us about confusion after dinner." But Grandma was not confused. I knew it the way you know a storm is coming before the sky changes. When dessert was served, my father stood and tapped his spoon against a glass. The room quieted. He looked pleased with himself, broad-shouldered in his navy sweater, cheeks red from wine and attention. "Before we finish the evening," he announced, "your mother and I want to share a little Christmas surprise with our daughters." The room turned toward Sienna first because everyone knew where light belonged in that house. My mother brought out a thick ivory envelope tied with gold string and placed it in Sienna's hands. Sienna gasped before she even opened it, trained for gratitude the way actresses train for tears. Inside were printed confirmations for a 12-night Mediterranean cruise, balcony suites, private excursions, airfare, spa credits, the whole glittering fantasy. "For you, Blake, and the boys," my mother said, already crying. "You work so hard, you deserve beauty." Everyone applauded. Sienna stood, sobbing delicately, hugging Mom and Dad while Blake gave a humble little wave as if he had not already known. I clapped because the room expected me to. Then my mother turned toward me. The applause thinned into silence. She held out a small white envelope, the kind pharmacies use for receipts. "And for Lena," she said brightly. My stomach went cold before I touched it. Inside was one lottery ticket from a gas station near my parents' house. It had been folded twice. Not even placed in a card. A few people chuckled before anyone spoke, sensing the joke like dogs smell meat. My mother's smile widened. "We thought a little chance might be just right for you. Who knows, maybe life will surprise you." Blake leaned back in his chair. "Careful, Lena. If you win $20, everyone here will expect you to upgrade the wine." Laughter rolled across the table. Sienna whispered, "That's actually kind of cute," which made it worse. My father did not laugh loudly, but he smiled. That hurt more than Blake's joke. I looked at the ticket in my hand. The paper was cheap and ordinary. My humiliation was not. It had witnesses. It had lighting. It had dessert plates and champagne flutes and my mother's favorite gold-rimmed china. Something inside me went very quiet, not weak quiet, dangerous quiet, the kind of quiet that comes after you finally stop hoping. I looked at my mother and smiled. "Thank you," I said. "I'll keep it safe." She looked disappointed that I had not cried. That was when Grandma Alina stood. She did it slowly, painfully, one hand on the table, her cane shaking beneath her weight. "No," she said. The room froze. "Alina," my father warned softly. "Sit down." "No," she repeated. Her voice trembled, but her eyes were fierce. "You do not dress cruelty up as a gift and call it family." My mother rose so fast her chair scraped the floor. "Mother, please, you're tired." Grandma pointed one thin finger at her. "I am old, Celeste. I am not blind." For one perfect second, no one moved. Then my mother crossed the room, took Grandma's arm, and said with a laugh too sharp to be casual, "Let's get you to bed before you upset yourself." Grandma resisted just long enough to look at me. Her lips moved silently. Miriam Vale. Then, with her free hand, she tapped twice against the side of her old brown handbag resting near her chair. Tap, tap, like a code. Like a door opening. Later that night, after most guests had gone and Sienna was in the living room showing everyone photos of the cruise ship, I was in my father's study collecting coffee cups. I saw the brown handbag on the leather chair. Grandma had been taken back to her facility by my aunt, and in the confusion, the bag had been left behind. I knew I should not open it. I also knew Grandma had wanted me to. Inside, beneath a handkerchief and peppermint candies, was a sealed envelope with my name on it. My hands shook as I slipped it into my coat pocket. Then I noticed my father's desk drawer was open. I would have ignored it, but a red-stamped notice lay half out of a folder. Past due. Final demand. My father had always acted like money was a language he spoke fluently and I was too small to understand. But the documents on his desk told a different story. There were collection letters, refinancing notices, credit lines maxed out, and one agreement that made the air leave my lungs. A private loan for $240,000, signed by my father and backed by Blake's company. The interest terms were obscene. The collateral listed was Grandma Lena's house. Her house. The blue house with the porch swing, the rose trellis, the kitchen where she taught me to make biscuits, the little upstairs bedroom where I used to hide from Sienna when she told me I was adopted because nobody wanted me. Attached was a transfer authorization with Grandma's signature, dated 3 days after her fall, when she had been hospitalized and sedated for pain. I stared at that signature. It wobbled across the page like it had been dragged out of her hand. My mother had called it confusion. My father had called it family business. Blake had called himself a strategist. I pulled out my phone and photographed every page. I did not know exactly what I was holding yet, but I knew enough. The vacation, the exclusion, the public mockery, all of it suddenly looked different. They were not just cruel. They were hiding something. And I was the person they had underestimated badly enough to leave alone in the study with the truth. At home, just after midnight, I opened Grandma's envelope. Inside was a business card for Miriam Vale, attorney at law, and a note written in Grandma's elegant, shaky hand. Lena, if I cannot say it plainly, please let Miriam say it for me. Trust only what is written. Love is not proved by who speaks loudest at the table. It is proved by who protects you when there is nothing to gain. I sat at my kitchen table until dawn, the lottery ticket beside the note, my coat still on, my life splitting quietly into before and after. The next morning I called Miriam Vale. She answered like she had been waiting. "Lena Marlowe," she said, "your grandmother hoped you would reach out. What is happening to her house?" I asked, skipping every polite beginning. There was a pause. "Come to my office today if you can." "Is she in danger?" "Her assets are," Miriam said carefully, "and possibly her independence." I looked at the lottery ticket lying on the table. "There's something else," I said. "My parents gave me a lottery ticket last night as a joke. That sounds unpleasant but not legally relevant. I checked the numbers this morning." Another pause. "And I won." Silence. Then Miriam exhaled once slowly. "How much?" 92 million before taxes." "Lena," she said, her voice changing from professional to urgent, "do not tell your family, do not sign anything, do not post anything. Put the ticket somewhere secure and come here immediately." That was the first good advice anyone had given me in years. I drove to her office with the ticket inside a plastic sleeve, hidden in a book of planting sketches on the passenger seat. Miriam Vale was not what I expected. She was in her late 50s, with steel gray curls, sharp brown eyes, and the calm, controlled posture of a woman who had watched many families destroy themselves over money and was no longer surprised by it. Her office overlooked a courthouse square, and the shelves behind her desk were lined with estate law books and framed photographs of rescue dogs. She made a copy of the ticket, locked the original in a fireproof safe, and then opened a file with my grandmother's name on the tab. "Your grandmother created a trust for you 11 years ago," she said. I blinked. "A trust? $700,000 originally. It has grown since then." My hands went cold. "I never knew." "She did not want you to know until she was certain your parents could not pressure you. She believed you were the only family member who loved her without calculating what it might bring you. I had spent my life being told I was the selfish one because I did not perform gratitude for neglect. Hearing that someone had seen me clearly almost broke me. Miriam slid papers across the desk. The trust is intact. The house is not. Your grandmother's signature appears on a transfer authorization and collateral agreement executed while she was under medication. The timing is deeply troubling. Can it be reversed? Possibly, not easily. But now that you have resources, the options change. We can challenge capacity, request medical records, file an emergency petition, negotiate with the lender, and protect the property before your brother-in-law's company can seize it. Blake's company, I said. So he benefits if Dad defaults. Miriam looked at me for a long moment. Yes. It was amazing how one small word could rearrange an entire family. That afternoon, I did not call my mother. I did not call my father. I did not call Sienna. I signed papers to claim the lottery through a legal entity Miriam arranged, protecting my name as much as state law allowed. I gave authorization for her to begin investigating Grandma's house. Then I drove to the assisted living facility. Grandma Lena was sitting by the window in a pale blue cardigan, watching the parking lot as if she had been expecting me. When I walked in, she smiled. "You found it." I knelt beside her chair. "I found too much." Her hand came to my hair the way it had when I was little. "I'm sorry." "No," I said. "Don't apologize. Tell me what they made you sign." Her face clouded. "I remember your father crying. I remember Celeste saying the house would be safer if paperwork was organized. Blake was there. He said it was temporary. I was so tired, Lena. My hip hurt. They kept saying I had already agreed." Her voice broke. "I thought maybe I had." Rage rose in me so cleanly it almost felt holy. Not the loud rage that makes you reckless. The cold kind, the kind that builds a plan. "Grandma," I said, "I'm going to fix it." She studied me. "With what money?" I laughed then once because the universe had written a scene so absurd no one would believe it if I told it badly. "That lottery ticket Mom gave me." Grandma's eyes narrowed. "The cruel little one. It won." Her mouth opened. For a moment she looked 20 years younger. Then she started laughing, softly at first, then harder until tears filled her eyes. "Oh, Celeste," she whispered. "You foolish, foolish woman." I laughed with her, but I was crying too. Grandma took my hand. "Listen to me. Money can rescue you, but it can also poison you. Do not use it to become their punishment. Use it to become free. I want them to know what they did. Then let truth do its work," she said. "Truth has sharper teeth than revenge." I promised her I would remember that, and for the most part I did. For 2 weeks I lived inside a secret so large it made ordinary life feel unreal. I went to client meetings. I reviewed irrigation plans. I answered emails about winter plantings and drainage issues while my attorney built a wall around my new life. At night, I read every document Miriam sent me. Loan papers, transfer papers, medical records, bank letters. I learned that my father's hardware business had been failing for almost 5 years. I learned he had borrowed from banks, then private lenders, then Blake. I learned Blake's private financing, company specialized in high-interest loans to people who had run out of respectable options. I learned Grandma's house had been the prize from the beginning. A house in a rapidly developing neighborhood. A house worth far more than my father owed. A house Blake could acquire cheaply through default, then flip through one of his shell companies. My father had not been tricked in the innocent way I wanted to believe. He had been desperate, proud, and willing to risk his own mother's home rather than admit failure. My mother had known enough to look away. And Sienna, that was the question that kept me awake. Was she part of it, or had she been floating above the family, wrought in the golden balloon our parents built for her? I did not know. Then Aunt Ruth called. "Can you meet me?" she asked. "Not at your parents' house. Not anywhere they go." We met at a quiet bakery near the river. She arrived wrapped in a gray coat, face pale, eyes nervous. Aunt Ruth had always been kind to me in small ways, but small kindness can feel like cowardice when someone needed protection and no one gave it. She sat across from me and placed her phone on the table. "I should have spoken sooner," she said. "About what?" "Blake." My body went still. She opened a folder of screenshots, messages, photos, hotel confirmations. A woman named Marissa, who worked in Blake's office, had been with him for almost a year. The messages were not ambiguous. They were intimate, ugly, and practical in the way only betrayal can be. One message made my stomach turn. "Once the old lady's house clears, I can finally untangle from Sienna. She'll cry, her parents will panic, and I'll be gone before they understand the structure." I read it twice. "Does Sienna know?" Aunt Ruth shook her head. "I don't think so. She thinks he's building an empire for them." "Why didn't you tell her?" Ruth looked down. "Because your mother would have said I was jealous, because Blake scares me, because I am not as brave as I should be." I wanted to be angry at her. Part of me was, but another part understood the architecture of fear in families like ours. Everyone knew something. Everyone suspected something. Everyone waited for someone else to risk becoming the problem. "Thank you for telling me now," I said. Ruth began to cry. "Lena, I watched them diminish you for years. I told myself you were strong enough to handle it. That was easier than admitting we were all letting it happen." There it was again. Strong. The word people gave you when they had no intention of helping. I folded the screenshots into my bag. "Strong people still deserve witnesses," I said. "I know," she whispered. "I know that now." The Mediterranean cruise left in March. My parents, Sienna, Blake, the twins, and 2 family friends all went. I was not invited, of course, though my mother did call the week before departure and ask whether I could check on her plants, bring in the mail, and make sure Grandma doesn't get worked up about our being away. "Grandma is not a houseplant," I said. There was a silence. "There is no need to be unpleasant," my mother replied. "We thought you would want to be useful." Useful, appropriate, independent, strong. The cage had many names. I told her I had work. She sighed dramatically, as if my refusal to serve her vacation was proof of my flawed character. The morning their ship left port, I was in Miriam's office signing final documents. The lottery claim was moving. The trust was secured. The petition regarding Grandma's property was ready. Miriam had also uncovered enough irregularities in Blake's loan structure to make his attorney suddenly interested in settlement. "Once they realize you can pay the debt and challenge the transfer simultaneously," Miriam said, "their leverage collapses. Will my family know I'm behind it? Not immediately, but eventually." I looked out the window at the courthouse steps. Good. On the 3rd day of their cruise, the local news reported that a major lottery jackpot had been claimed through a trust connected to our county. The ticket had been purchased from the same gas station where my mother had bought mine. I did not leak anything. I did not have to. Small towns do not need facts to start a fire. By noon, the family group chat was buzzing. Cousin Dean wrote, "Imagine buying coffee next to a millionaire and not knowing." Aunt Ruth responded with a single wide-eyed emoji, which made me smile. Then my mother texted me privately. "Lena, do you still have that lottery ticket from Christmas?" I looked at the message for a long time. I imagined her on the ship, sunglasses pushed into her hair, panic blooming beneath her sunscreen. I waited 46 minutes before answering. "Yes." "Why?" Her reply came instantly. "No reason, honey, just curious, honey." She had called me sweetheart when she wanted to cut me, and honey when she wanted something. An hour later, my phone began ringing. "Mom, Dad, Sienna, Blake, Mom again, Dad again." Blake left the first voicemail. "Lena, it's Blake. Interesting news in town. I'd love to talk." You're going to need guidance if what we think happened actually happened. Big money requires big thinking. He sounded amused, like he was already standing inside my bank account measuring curtains. My mother's first voicemail was sweet. Her 8th was tearful. Her 15th was angry. I don't understand why you are ignoring us when this concerns the whole family. There it was. The whole family. Money had made me visible, not loved. Visible. By evening, I had 63 missed calls and enough voicemails to create a museum exhibit called People Who Suddenly Remembered Lena. I listened to everyone, not because I enjoyed it, but because I needed to hear the pattern clearly. No one asked if I was okay. No one asked if I was frightened. No one apologized for the Christmas dinner. They asked how much. They asked whether I had claimed it. They asked who was advising me. Blake used the phrase family investment office 3 times. My father said, "We need to handle this together." My mother said, "After all we've done for you." Sienna sent one text, "Is it true?" That was all. I typed back, "We will talk tonight. Everyone needs to be on video at 8. Blake responded before anyone else, perfect. Smart move. I almost laughed. He still thought he was the smartest person in every room. At 8 o'clock, I opened my laptop. Their faces appeared from a ship lounge, all warm lighting, polished wood, and ocean darkness beyond the windows. My mother sat front and center, smiling too brightly. My father looked tense. Sienna looked confused and pale. Blake sat beside her with one arm along the back of her chair like he owned the frame. "Lena," Mom said, voice trembling with fake tenderness. "There you are, we have been so worried." "About me?" I asked. "Of course about you." "That's new." Her smile faltered. My father cleared his throat. "Let's not start with attitude. We heard something about the lottery." "Yes," I said. "The ticket you gave me won." No one breathed. Even Blake's expression shifted. "How much?" my father asked, trying and failing to sound casual. 92 million before taxes." My mother made a small sound like a prayer. Sienna put her hand over her mouth. Blake recovered first, naturally. "That is extraordinary. Lena, congratulations, truly. This is exactly why you need experienced people around you. Sudden wealth can ruin lives if it isn't managed." "I agree," I said. "That's why I hired an attorney." His smile thinned. "An attorney is fine, but wealth strategy requires—" "Blake," I interrupted, "you are not here to advise me, you are here to listen." The air changed. My father leaned forward. "What does that mean?" "It means I know about the loan." I shared my screen. The first document appeared, my father's loan agreement with Blake's company. The ship lounge went silent. "Lena," Dad said, "where did you get that?" "From your desk on Christmas night after you humiliated me in front of 30 people and left felony-shaped paperwork beside your brandy." My mother gasped. "Do not use that tone." "This tone is the polite version." I clicked to the next page. $240,000 at an interest rate designed to bury him. Collateral, Grandma Aliner's house, not your house, not Dad's business. Grandma's house. Sienna turned to Blake. "What is she talking about?" Blake's jaw tightened. "Lena doesn't understand complex finance. I understand theft when it has letterhead." I clicked again. Grandma's signature filled the screen. This was signed while Grandma was hospitalized after her fall under medication with documented cognitive impairment. Miriam Vale has her medical records. We have grounds to challenge capacity and coercion. My father looked gray. My mother began shaking her head. "We were trying to protect the house. By risking it to pay Dad's debts. Your father was under pressure. So you put pressure on an 89-year-old woman." Sienna whispered, "Mom." My mother looked at her, desperate. "It was temporary." "Everything is temporary when you expect someone else to pay for it," I said. Then I opened the screenshots Aunt Ruth had given me. Blake's face changed before the first message fully loaded. That was how I knew they were real. Sienna stared at the screen. Her name was not in the messages, but her life was. Marissa, hotel confirmations, promises, plans, one line about the old lady's house clearing, one line about untangling from Sienna, one line about being gone before they understood the structure. The words sat there in blue and gray bubbles, ruthless and ordinary. Sienna made a sound I had never heard from her before, not a cry, more like something tearing. "Blake," she said. He stood. "These are private communications taken out of context." "Which context makes them better?" I asked. "The affair context or the fraud context?" "You bitter little." "Careful," Miriam's voice said from beside me. I tilted the laptop slightly so they could see her. I had not told them she was there. "Mr. Calder," she said calmly, "my office has preserved all relevant materials, including loan documents, property transfer records, communications, and medical evidence. Any threats made to my client will become part of the record." Blake sat down slowly. My father put his head in his hands. My mother began crying, but her tears were aimed at Sienna, not me. "Baby, we didn't know about the woman," she said. Sienna stared at her. "But you knew about the house." My mother had no answer. That silence did more damage than any sentence I could have spoken. I looked at my sister then, really looked at her. For the first time in my life, she did not look golden. She looked trapped, frightened, and very young. "Here is what happens now," I said. "Grandma's house will be protected. The debt will be cleared only to remove any claim against her property, not to save Dad's pride and not to rescue Blake. Any transfer signed while she was impaired will be challenged. No one in this family will control her assets again. I am not giving anyone money. I am not investing in Blake's company. I am not paying for your vacation, your debts, your lifestyle, your reputation, or your consequences." My mother sobbed harder. "Lena, we are your family. Family does not use an elderly woman's house as a bargaining chip. We gave you life," my father said quietly. "Grandma gave me shelter," I replied. "There is a difference." Blake muttered something I could not hear. Sienna stood up so fast her chair fell backward. "You plan to leave me?" she asked him. Blake reached for her, but she stepped away. "Sienna, don't do this here." "Here," she said, voice rising. "You mean in public, in front of people, like Christmas?" She looked at me then. The connection froze for half a second, and when it came back, tears were running down her face. "Lena," she whispered. "I didn't know. I wanted to believe her. I was not ready to. Then now you do." I ended the call. The silence in my apartment felt enormous. Miriam closed her folder gently. "You handled that with more restraint than many people would have." I laughed once shakily. "I don't feel restrained. Truth rarely feels gentle when it finally enters the room." After she left, I sat on the floor beside my couch because my legs suddenly did not trust themselves. My phone exploded. Messages, calls, voicemails. I turned it over and let it vibrate against the hardwood until the battery died. Then I cried, not because I regretted it, because telling the truth does not erase the years you spent needing someone to tell it for you. The fallout began before the cruise ended. Blake tried to get ahead of the story, of course. He told his business contacts I was unstable, jealous, newly rich, and paranoid. He told my cousins I had fabricated screenshots because I hated Sienna. He told my parents I was being manipulated by an attorney. Unfortunately for Blake, men like him always create more enemies than they remember. Marissa, the woman from his messages, found out he had called her an employee with boundary issues and decided she preferred arson to silence. She posted photos, receipts, messages, and a tearful video explaining exactly how long their affair had lasted and exactly what Blake had promised her. It spread faster than anyone expected because scandal loves a man who looks expensive and guilty. Within days, 2 former clients of Blake's financing company contacted regulators. Then 3 more. Then a retired couple came forward claiming they had nearly lost their farm through one of his bridge loan solutions. Miriam told me not to interfere. I didn't. I had already learned that sometimes the best revenge is stepping back, so karma has room to park. Sienna left the ship with the twins at the first port where she could arrange flights home. My parents stayed with Blake for reasons I still do not fully understand, maybe denial, maybe money, maybe the simple inability to admit they had chosen wrong. When they returned, my father called me. His voice sounded older. "Lena, I need to speak to you like an adult." That would be a first. He ignored that. "The business is in trouble. If this legal mess continues, I could lose everything. You risked Grandma's home to delay that outcome. I made mistakes." That is a sentence people use when they are standing near the truth but do not want to touch it. He went quiet. "I was desperate. And you made her desperate too." His breath shook through the phone. "Can you help me?" There it was. Not "I'm sorry," not "I was wrong." Help me. I looked out my window at the small courtyard behind my apartment where winter branches scratched against a gray sky. "I am helping Grandma. I am not helping you avoid consequences. You have more money than you can spend. And you had more chances than you deserved." He hung up. My mother called 10 minutes later and screamed until her voice cracked. I held the phone away from my ear and listened to words I had once feared. Selfish, cruel, ungrateful, cold, poisoned by money, manipulated by strangers, destroying the family. When she finally stopped to breathe, I said, "Mom, I am willing to have a conversation when you are ready to discuss what you did. I am not available for a performance about what you lost." "You sound like a stranger," she whispered. "No," I said. "I sound like myself without the fear." She hung up too. It would be months before we spoke again. By April, Grandma Aliner's house was safe. The transfer was voided. The debt tied to the property was paid solely to remove the lien, with strict documentation that no benefit or ownership passed to my parents. The house was placed into a protected arrangement honoring Grandma's original wishes. She would live there for the rest of her life with full-time care, and after her passing, it would transfer according to the plan she had made before my family tried to rewrite it in their favor. I paid for renovations quietly. A ramp at the front door, a safer bathroom, better lighting. A bedroom on the first floor, nurses she liked. A garden restored with white roses, lavender, and the deep red peonies she used to say looked like velvet secrets. The day she came home, the sky was clear after 3 days of rain. The transport van pulled into the driveway, and Grandma turned her head toward the porch before anyone opened the door. "My house," she said, and the nurse began crying before I did. I wheeled her up the ramp myself. Inside, she touched the banister, the wall, the edge of the kitchen table. "I thought I would die in that place," she said softly. "Not because it was bad, because it wasn't mine. You're home now." She looked at me. "So are you in a way." I did not understand until later. Home was not always a house. Sometimes home was the first place where no one could make you small. Sienna came to see me 3 weeks after she filed for divorce. She did not come to my apartment unannounced. She texted first. "Can we meet somewhere public? I won't ask you for anything. I chose a quiet cafe with outdoor tables because I wanted air around me." She arrived without makeup, wearing jeans and a sweater, her hair tied back messily. I had never seen her look so unprepared for being seen. She sat across from me and folded her hands together. For a while, neither of us spoke. Finally, she said, "I don't know how to be here." "Neither do I," she nodded. "I keep replaying Christmas." I waited. "I laughed," she said. Her eyes filled. "When Mom gave you that ticket, I laughed because everyone else was laughing, and because I had spent my whole life thinking if you were hurt, it was somehow because you chose to be hurt." That sentence was uglier and more honest than any apology could have been. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because my therapist says apologies that skip the truth are just requests for comfort." I almost smiled. "Good therapist. Expensive therapist," she said, then winced. "Sorry, that sounded like old me." "A little." She looked down. "I didn't know about Grandma's house, I need you to believe that, but I did know Mom and Dad treated you like staff. I knew they excluded you. I knew Blake mocked you. I knew I benefited from it. I told myself you didn't care because you were independent." There was that word again, but this time she said it like a confession. "I cared," I said. Her face crumpled. "I know." We sat there while traffic moved beyond the cafe fence and a sparrow hopped near our table, bold and hungry. Sienna wiped her cheeks. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking to be sisters by next Tuesday. I just wanted to say I see it now. Seeing it now doesn't erase it. I know, but it matters." She looked at me then, and for the first time in years I saw not the golden daughter, not the rival my parents had built for me, but a woman standing in the ruins of the story she had been rewarded for believing. "The twins miss you," she said softly. "They asked why Aunt Lena doesn't come over anymore. What did you tell them? That adults made mistakes and Aunt Lena needed space. That's better than what Mom would have said." Sienna gave a sad little laugh. "Mom says you joined a cult of attorneys." I laughed before I could stop myself. It startled both of us. That was how the door opened. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just one unexpected laugh across a table that had once felt impossible. My father's business closed in June, not because I exposed him, though my mother insisted on telling people that. It closed because debts do not become lies just because daughters stay quiet. The building was sold. The equipment liquidated. My father took a job managing repairs at a chain hardware store outside town. My mother, who had once treated grocery clerks like furniture, began working part-time at an upscale market where women from her old book club sometimes pretended not to recognize her. I did not celebrate. This surprised people. They expected the new rich version of me to buy billboards or throw a party or send my mother a lottery ticket every Christmas. But revenge is expensive even when you can afford it. It charges interest in the soul. I had no interest in living inside their downfall. I wanted a life so full that their names became weather, not climate. Blake's life unraveled more dramatically. Regulatory investigations led to civil suits. His company collapsed under the weight of its own fine print. Marissa disappeared from social media after giving one final interview to a local reporter, calling him a man who confused contracts with character. Sienna's divorce became ugly, then boring, which is how most legal endings go. She got primary custody of the twins. Blake got supervised visitation for a while, then reduced involvement when he moved 2 states away for what he called a consulting opportunity and Miriam called flight with nicer branding. I stopped asking for updates. Some people leave your life and still try to rent rooms in your head. I changed the locks. The lottery money changed my circumstances quickly and my character slowly, mostly by revealing which parts of my character had been survival strategies. I did not buy a mansion. I bought a small brick house 12 minutes from Grandma's, with a wild backyard and a kitchen that caught morning light. I adopted a scruffy brown dog named Juniper from a rescue shelter because she had suspicious eyes and trust issues, which made us family immediately. I expanded my landscape design studio, hired 2 women who reminded me of younger versions of myself, and started taking projects I cared about instead of projects that only paid well. We designed healing gardens for shelters, shaded courtyards for elder care homes, and public spaces in neighborhoods that had been promised beauty last. I also created the Lena House Fund, a grant program for women who needed emergency legal help against financially abusive relatives or partners. Miriam became one of the advisory board members. Aunt Ruth volunteered. Sienna donated once, anonymously, though she forgot that bank transfers show names. I did not mention it. Grandma loved the fund most of all. "A house is not just walls," she told me one afternoon as we sat on her porch watching Juniper dig a hole she had absolutely been told not to dig. "It is the place where your no is allowed to mean no." I wrote that sentence down and used it on the fund's first annual report. Grandma pretended to be annoyed and then asked for 6 copies. My relationship with my parents became a narrow bridge neither side crossed often. My father sent short texts on holidays. "Merry Christmas. Hope you're healthy. Dad." I answered kindly but briefly. My mother called every few months, usually beginning with small talk and ending somewhere near accusation. Sometimes she cried about the apartment. Sometimes she mentioned bills. Sometimes she said, "I still don't understand how you could do that to us." I would answer, "I told the truth about what you did." She would say, "You always have to make things sound so harsh." I would say, "No, Mom, I stopped making them sound softer than they were." Once, she asked if I loved her. The question hit me harder than I expected. I looked around my kitchen, at the dog asleep by the door, at a vase of flowers from Grandma's garden, at the life I had built in the space where guilt used to live. "I think I loved the mother I kept hoping you would become," I said. She was silent for so long I thought she had hung up. Then she whispered, "That is a cruel thing to say." "It is a true thing to say." We did not speak for 3 months after that. I used to think no contact was a dramatic door slam. Now I understand it can be quieter. Sometimes no contact is simply refusing to keep walking into rooms where your wounds are treated like inconveniences. Sometimes it is letting a phone ring because peace is more important than proving you are available. Sometimes it is answering politely, but not emotionally, because access to your voice is not access to your soul. Sienna and I are not magically healed. I will not lie and say one coffee fixed 30 years of being positioned against each other. But we are honest in ways we never were before. She invites me to the twins' school events without making it feel like an obligation. I go when I want to. She asks about my work and actually listens. Sometimes she says things that sound like our mother, and then she catches herself. Sometimes I expect her to hurt me before she does anything wrong. We are both learning to speak without the old ghosts translating. Last Thanksgiving, she came to Grandma's house with the boys and brought a pie she clearly bought at a bakery, but claimed she baked. Grandma took one bite and said, "The bakery on Milton still uses too much nutmeg." Sienna looked horrified. I laughed so hard I had to leave the room. Later, while the boys played with Juniper in the yard, Sienna stood beside me at the kitchen sink and said, "Do you ever wish the ticket had never won?" I looked through the window at Grandma wrapped in a blanket on the porch, at the twins chasing the dog, at the garden glowing copper in the late autumn light. "No," I said, "but not because of the money." "Because of what it revealed?" she asked. I nodded. She dried a plate slowly. "I used to think being the favorite meant I was loved better. What do you think now?" "I think it meant I was useful to their version of themselves." That was the moment I knew Sienna was truly changing. Not because she apologized again, but because she had begun telling herself less comfortable truths. Grandma Alina passed away in early winter in her own bed in her blue house with snow falling outside and my hand in hers. Sienna was there too. So were the twins, asleep downstairs under quilts. Grandma's last clear words to me were, "Do not shrink to keep anyone warm." I carry that sentence like a lantern. Her funeral was small because that was what she wanted. My parents came. My mother cried loudly. My father looked carved out of stone. At the reception, Mom approached me near the kitchen where I was arranging flowers from Grandma's garden. For a second, I thought she might say something real. Instead, she touched the edge of the vase and said, "Your grandmother always did favor you at the end." I looked at her tired face, her carefully curled hair, the bitterness she had polished until it was the only jewelry she had left. And for the first time, her words did not enter me. They stopped at the boundary I had built and fell to the floor. "No," I said gently. "She protected me. There's a difference." My mother's eyes flashed, but she said nothing. She walked away. I did not follow. After the funeral, Sienna helped me clean the kitchen. We worked in silence for a while. Then she said, "Old me would have believed Mom. Old me would have tried to convince her not to." And now, I tied the trash bag and looked around Grandma's kitchen, the place that had held the best parts of my childhood. Now I let people be wrong without volunteering my piece as evidence. Sienna nodded. "I'm trying to learn that." "Me too," I said, "because healing does not make you superior. It makes you responsible for your own life. That is harder and better. A year and a half after that Christmas Eve, people still ask me whether winning the lottery was the best thing that ever happened to me. The answer is complicated. Money is not magic. It does not make grief disappear. It does not turn cruel parents into loving ones. It does not erase the sound of a room laughing at you. It does not give you back the years you spent mistaking endurance for worth. But money can buy distance. It can buy legal protection. It can buy time to think before reacting. It can buy a ramp for your grandmother's porch, a good attorney, a safe home, therapy, medical care, payroll for employees you respect, scholarships for women who were told their dreams were decorative. Money can open doors, but you still have to walk through them without dragging your old cage behind you. The real change began before the jackpot cleared. It began when I looked at that cheap ticket in my hand and understood that my family had not misjudged my value by accident. They had benefited from me not knowing it. They needed me useful, quiet, and grateful for scraps. They needed me convinced that exclusion was independence and cruelty was honesty. They needed me waiting outside the circle, hoping someone would move over and make room. That night, they thought they were handing me proof that I did not matter. Instead, they handed me a mirror. And in that mirror, I finally saw a woman who had been patient long enough. I am not telling you this story because I think everyone needs $92 million to leave a toxic family system. Most people will never receive a miracle folded inside an insult. I know that. But you do not need a jackpot to stop attending your own humiliation. You do not need a lawyer to admit something hurts. You do not need permission to set down roles you never agreed to carry. If you are the one who is always called strong because nobody plans to help you, I see you. If you are the one invited only when there is work to do, I see you. If your family laughs and then calls you sensitive for bleeding, I see you. If you have spent years trying to become easy enough to love, please hear me. Love that requires your disappearance is not love. It is ownership with better lighting. Build your own table. Leave the rooms where your dignity is treated like a negotiable expense. Protect the people who protected you. Tell the truth even if your voice shakes. And when they say you have changed, understand that sometimes what they really mean is, you are no longer controllable. My name is Lena Marlowe. I am 36 now. I design gardens for places that need healing. I run a foundation named after the grandmother who saw me before I saw myself. I have a dog who destroys flower beds, a sister who is slowly becoming a friend, parents I love from a distance, and a life that finally belongs to me. The lottery ticket changed my bank account. The humiliation changed my vision. The truth changed my future. And choosing myself changed everything. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. If this reminded you of your own family, your own silence, or the moment you finally understood your worth, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below, subscribe to After Silence Stories, and I'll see you in the next episode.